In a world filled with noise, distractions, and blind followers, there exists one power greater than money, status, or beauty: the power of knowledge. It is not the loud man who rules the room, but the one who understands the minds that fill it. Machiavelli once observed that fortune favors the prepared mind, and the man who sharpens his intellect every day becomes untouchable, unpredictable, and ultimately unstoppable. Every empire, every throne, every revolution, all began with a mind that saw what others couldn't. Knowledge is not about collecting facts, it is about cultivating perception, the rare ability to see behind appearances, to read motives, and to predict the outcomes before they unfold. While most people walk blindly into the future, the educated man walks with foresight, because he studies not only what is, but what will be. You see, the world doesn't reward effort, it rewards understanding. The man who knows why people act the way they do controls the man who only knows how to act. Knowledge gives you leverage. The kind of leverage that doesn't need permission or approval. It turns you from a piece on the chessboard into the player controlling the game. And in the Machiavellian world, control is everything. But here's the truth: most people don't educate themselves. They consume, endlessly, passively, carelessly. They scroll, watch, react, and forget. They mistake information for wisdom. Knowledge, true knowledge, is not entertainment, it is transformation. It is a weapon, and like any weapon, it must be sharpened daily. Every day that you fail to learn, your blade dulls. Every day you avoid reading, reflecting, and observing, your enemies grow sharper. You don't lose the game in a single day. You lose it gradually, in small moments of laziness disguised as comfort. And while you rest, someone else studies. Someone else trains their mind. Someone else becomes the version of yourself that could have been. Understand this: power doesn't belong to those who seek comfort. It belongs to those who can endure discomfort for knowledge. Every king was once a student of the world, and every fool was once a man who thought he already knew enough. The Machiavellian mind never stops learning because it knows the moment you stop learning, you become predictable. And when you become predictable, you become weak. An intelligent man studies history because he knows the same games repeat with different players. He studies psychology because he knows the mind is the battlefield of all control. He studies human behavior because manipulation is not born from cruelty. It is born from understanding. And he studies himself because mastery over others begins with mastery over self. When Machiavelli wrote The Prince, he didn't write it for philosophers. He wrote it for rulers. He understood that knowledge without action is vanity. To know is to see, to act upon knowledge. That is where power begins. You must not only learn but also apply. Learn how people rise, how they fall, how they are deceived, and how they deceive. Learn the nature of loyalty, of fear, of ambition. Learn what moves people and what paralyzes them. Because when you know what drives others, you drive them. Ask yourself, when was the last time you learned something that changed the way you think? When was the last time you studied to dominate, not to impress? When was the last time you challenged your own ignorance instead of defending it? If your answers are vague, then you already know where you stand in the hierarchy of minds. The man who educates himself daily is not competing with others, he is escaping them. He is walking out of the crowd and into command. Every book you read, every deep thought you entertain, every quiet hour of reflection, these are the invisible steps that lead to authority, because authority doesn't come from title or inheritance. It comes from competence, and competence comes from knowledge. The Machiavellian mind is not concerned with appearing wise. It is obsessed with becoming wise. It studies everything that grants advantage, from human emotion to strategic deception, from persuasion to silence. It never allows itself to be unarmed intellectually. The ignorant man fears change. The educated man uses it. The ignorant man argues. The educated man observes. The ignorant man reacts. The educated man predicts. That is the difference between the 99% and the 1%. The difference between the ruled and the ruler. The uneducated mind obeys impulse. The educated mind governs it. Every day, you must feed your mind like a soldier sharpens his sword. Read something that disturbs your comfort. Study something that challenges your beliefs. Observe someone who hides their true nature and learn from it. Because knowledge is not a possession. It is a living force. It grows when you grow. It weakens when you stagnate. And in a world where everyone competes for comfort, the one who chooses knowledge chooses dominance. The mind that learns daily conquers silently. It doesn't shout, it doesn't boast, it doesn't beg for recognition. It simply rises, while others wonder how. That is the essence of Machiavellian education: quiet, strategic, endless, and sharp. The kind of knowledge that bends reality to your will and makes ignorance kneel before understanding. Every day, You are given a silent battlefield, the battle between growth and stagnation, between your mind's hunger for evolution and your body's craving for comfort. And most people lose this battle before it even begins. They wake up, repeat yesterday, and call it life. They chase distractions, not wisdom. They consume noise, not knowledge. And in doing so, they betray their potential, not because they are weak, but because they are comfortable. Machiavelli would tell you this: the world does not destroy you through chaos. It destroys you through routine, through the slow poison of repetition that convinces you that tomorrow will be different. Well, you do the same thing today. Most people are trapped, not by others, but by their own habits. They live the same thoughts, speak the same words, meet the same people, and expect different outcomes. That is not living, that is looping. To grow every day is to rebel against that loop. It means to see every sunrise as an opportunity to become more dangerous, more capable, more insightful. Because the mind that doesn't grow daily begins to rot silently. And once the rot sets in, mediocrity takes over. The man who does not improve himself daily becomes a puppet of those who do. That's the brutal law of nature. Evolve or be ruled by those who did. Ask yourself, when did you last learn something that made you uncomfortable? When did you last confront your own ignorance? Growth is not a pleasant process, it's a violent one. It tears away illusion, pride, and laziness. But most people will do anything to avoid discomfort. They prefer a comfortable lie over an uncomfortable truth. They prefer entertainment over education, reaction over reflection, comfort over confrontation. Machiavelli understood this flaw in human nature, that the crowd would always choose ease over excellence. And that's precisely why the man who chooses discipline, the man who chooses daily learning, rises above the 99%. Because his consistency becomes his weapon, his self-discipline becomes his fortress. While others drown in repetition, he grows through reflection. Look around. The majority are predictable. Their days are copies of each other. The same conversations, the same distractions, the same thoughts recycled endlessly. Their lives have no direction because their minds have no challenge. They talk about success but never study it. They admire the powerful but never ask why they are powerful. They desire freedom but refuse the education that earns it. This is passive ignorance, the comfort of not knowing, disguised as peace of mind. Ignorance is not an accident, it's a choice. A strategic man knows that ignorance is the easiest way to be controlled. The less you understand, the easier you are to manipulate. That's why the rulers of the world never educate the masses fully, because educated minds question, while passive minds obey. So, when you choose not to learn, you are volunteering for servitude. You are surrendering your mind to those who feed on your inattention. Daily growth is not about reading motivational quotes or repeating affirmations. It's about confrontation. Confronting your mental weaknesses, your emotional reactions, your intellectual blind spots. It's about asking yourself each day, where am I still ignorant? What do I still not understand? Because power begins the moment you realize how little you know. Ignorant man believes he knows everything. The wise man never stops learning. And here lies the difference between progress and decay. Growth happens in small moments. When you choose to read instead of scroll, to reflect instead of react, to listen instead of argue, every one of those choices shapes the architecture of your mind. The ignorant man treats time like an infinite supply. The wise man treats every hour as a battlefield. Each minute he spends learning sharpens his advantage, while others waste theirs defending their comfort. The secret of daily growth lies in awareness. Most people drift through life half asleep. They repeat words they don't understand, follow routines they never question, and worship opinions they never examine. Their ignorance is not visible. It's disguised as normality. That's why self-education must be intentional. You must decide that every day will teach you something. About people, about power, about yourself. Because knowledge doesn't come to those who wait, comes to those who hunt for it. Every day you are presented with teachers disguised as mistakes, enemies, failures, or silence. The passive mind sees these as inconveniences. The growing mind sees them as lessons. When Machiavelli observed the politics of Florence, he didn't just see corruption. He saw patterns of human behavior. He studied betrayal, flattery, ambition, and fear, because he understood that life itself is the greatest school for the strategic mind. And the man who learns from life daily never truly loses. You must treat every day as a classroom. Every conversation teaches you about motives. Every failure teaches you about timing. Every silence teaches you about control. Every insult teaches you about emotional strength. Growth doesn't need a classroom. It needs awareness. The ignorant man seeks a teacher. The wise man turns everything into one. Greatest tragedy is this: most people never even begin. They live in cycles of mental sleep, waiting for change to arrive from the outside. They wait for luck, for the system, for someone to rescue them. But the Machiavellian mind knows no one is coming. Growth is self-created, not gifted. Every day you grow, you are stealing power from those who remain asleep. Every day you study, observe, reflect, you are widening the gap between yourself and the passive crowd. So, while others talk about dreams, you must dissect them. While they chase entertainment, you must chase insight. While they waste their time arguing, you must sharpen your understanding. Because in the end, the world is not divided by rich and poor or strong and weak. It is divided by those who learn daily and those who refuse to. Most people think learning is about collecting knowledge, but Machiavelli knew the truth. Learning is a weapon, and like any weapon, it must be sharpened with purpose. Not all knowledge leads to power. Some knowledge distracts, some weakens, and some serves no use in the pursuit of dominance. That is why the wise man learns selectively. He studies what gives him leverage, what gives him advantage, what gives him control. Because in the game of life, information is currency, but strategic knowledge is empire. Every day you are surrounded by endless information, opinions, trends, ideas, all screaming for your attention. But attention is the true cost. The man who tries to learn everything learns nothing deeply. He becomes a collector of noise instead of a creator of insight. Machiavelli understood that wisdom is not about how much you know, but about what you know that others don't. Strategic learning means choosing your lessons carefully, filtering out the irrelevant, and feeding your mind only what strengthens your understanding of human nature, power, and influence. Ask yourself, what are you learning every day that makes you more capable of controlling outcomes? What are you studying that enhances your perception of others? What are you reading that prepares you for conflict, negotiation, or persuasion? Because if your learning doesn't build your ability to predict and manipulate reality, then it is not power. It is decoration. The world is full of educated fools, people who know everything about the trivial and nothing about the essential. They fill their minds with random knowledge but remain powerless in real life. Strategic learning is different. It is deliberate. It's learning that turns into foresight. It means studying people more than theories, patterns more than facts, and strategy more than morality. The Machiavellian mind doesn't ask, is this knowledge good? It asks, is this knowledge useful? That single question separates the thinkers from the rulers, the philosophers from the tacticians, and the observers from the masters. When you learn strategically, you begin to see what others miss. You see the structure behind decisions, the pattern behind behavior, the motive behind words. You stop reacting and start anticipating. You no longer need to be told what's happening. You already know, because you understand the laws that govern human behavior. The ignorant man looks at what people do. The wise man studies why they do it. That's the education that builds power. Machiavelli learned from chaos, not from comfort. He observed rulers and traitors, soldiers and thieves. He studied how fear could control loyalty, how weakness could disguise ambition, and how appearances could rewrite truth. His education was not built in classrooms, built in observation. That is the essence of strategic learning, to study life as if it were a book written for you to master. Every conversation, every betrayal, every alliance, all of it becomes data for the mind that knows how to analyze it. You cannot control people if you do not understand them. You cannot lead if you cannot predict. And you cannot predict if you do not study patterns. Strategic learning is the art of connecting the invisible, of seeing that human nature, from the ancient world to now, has never changed. Only the costumes have. The same greed, fear, envy, and pride that ruled kings now rule your coworkers, your leaders, your rivals. Study these forces, and you will know how to move people without them realizing it. The Machiavellian learner knows that every subject connects to power. History teaches strategy, psychology teaches manipulation, literature teaches persuasion, philosophy teaches logic, even art teaches emotion, how beauty can disguise intent. Strategic learning means studying across fields, not to appear intelligent, but to operate effectively. You must become a master of synthesis, taking fragments from many domains and forging them into tools for control. The average man reads to escape reality. The Machiavellian man reads to conquer it. He doesn't learn to impress, he learns to influence. He doesn't seek validation, he seeks vision. Every piece of knowledge he absorbs is measured against one question. Can this strengthen my mind, sharpen my perception, or expand my control? If the answer is no, he discards it, because wasted attention is wasted potential, and every distraction weakens your strategic clarity. Learning must be tactical. When you study, study with intent. Learn to speak in ways that command respect. Learn to listen in ways that reveal secrets. Learn the rules so you can bend them. Learn people's weaknesses, because power hides in their blind spots. Machiavelli knew that the wise man gathers knowledge not for decoration, but for direction. To him, every fact was a tool, every observation a weapon, every conversation a lesson in disguise. You must train your mind to see opportunity where others see boredom. Study the power structures around you. Who controls what, who influences whom, who obeys without realizing it. Study how emotion can be turned into strategy, how fear can silence, how desire can be redirected, how ignorance can be exploited. That is not cruelty, that is awareness. Because knowledge without strategy is like a sword without a hand, sharp, but useless. The truth is, you do not need to know everything. You need to know enough to move people, to shape situations, to navigate conflict. You must know how to think faster, deeper, and colder than the rest. You must understand not just the logic of the world, but its psychology. Learn to interpret tone, body language, motive, the invisible signals that dictate every interaction. While others listen to words, you must listen to intentions. Strategic learning transforms knowledge into foresight. It allows you to see the world as a series of moves, each with consequences you can anticipate. It turns confusion into clarity, chaos into pattern, and reaction into control. Every time you study strategically, you are not just learning, you are upgrading your vision. You are becoming the person who doesn't wait for change, but creates it. In the theater of life, timing decides everything. The ones who rise above the masses are not the strongest, nor the loudest, but the ones who see the next move before anyone else. This is the Machiavellian art of staying ahead, the ability to anticipate, to observe, and to act before the world even knows it's being moved. Most people react. The wise prepare. The powerful predict. Those who stay ahead don't just play the game, they design it. Every day, most people live in delay. They respond after things happen. They prepare after they've lost. They understand only after they've suffered. They live in hindsight. The Machiavellian mind lives in foresight. It studies the invisible currents of behavior, the subtle signs of change, and moves before the rest even notice the shift. That is why he never looks rushed, because he already acted while others were still thinking. To stay ahead is not luck. It is calculation. It is the product of daily observation, relentless reflection, and a disciplined refusal to be caught unprepared. Machiavelli once wrote that fortune favors the prepared mind, not the hopeful one. The man who stays ahead knows that most of his victories are won in silence before the battle even begins. He reads the future through patterns, through human weakness, through repetition. Because the truth is, human nature never changes, and whoever understands that truth rules every age. The art of staying ahead begins with awareness. You must train your eyes to see what others ignore. While the crowd looks at events, you must look at causes. While they chase outcomes, you must study origins. Every shift in power, every betrayal, every opportunity, all begins long before it becomes visible. The mind that stays ahead notices the subtle cracks in the system, unspoken tension in a conversation, the weakness hidden behind a smile. It observes quietly, it calculates precisely, and when it strikes with certainty. Most people are blind to patterns. They think life happens randomly, but a Machiavellian thinker knows there is structure beneath chaos. The same emotional triggers that ruled men 500 years ago still rule them today: greed, vanity, fear, pride, and desire. Once you learn to recognize these forces, you can predict how people will behave, how they will respond, how they will betray themselves. Staying ahead means learning to see not what people say, but what they will do next. To stay ahead, you must detach from the illusions that control the majority. The masses live by reaction, reacting to news, to gossip, to pleasure, to pain. They are always one step behind reality, slaves to whatever the world throws at them. But the one who stays ahead moves strategically, never emotionally. He controls his impulses because he knows every reaction gives away his position. Patience becomes his weapon. Silence becomes his disguise. His foresight comes not from luck, but from restraint. The man who stays ahead doesn't chase trends. He studies why they exist. He doesn't fight every battle. He chooses the one that decides the rest. He doesn't seek attention. He lets attention come to him. This kind of control makes others believe he's lucky or gifted, but the truth is, he simply plans further, sees deeper, and moves earlier than everyone else. Machiavelli understood that those who stay ahead must master perception. Appear weak when you are strong. Appear hesitant when you are certain. Appear uncertain when you are already in control. When your rivals react to your illusion, you move beneath it, always a step ahead, always unseen until it's too late. Strategy is not only about knowing what to do, it's about making others believe the opposite. But staying ahead requires endurance. You must be willing to learn longer than others, wait longer, and observe deeper. The impatient man cannot lead because he reveals his mind too early. Every time you act impulsively, you lose advantage. Every time you rush for validation, you expose your hand. Staying ahead is not about speed, it's about precision. It's about controlling time, deciding when to act, not just how. The master strategist knows that timing is more important than talent. Think of the great rulers, the cunning statesmen, the silent innovators. They all shared one trait: patience guided by vision. They could wait in stillness while the world moved chaotically around them, and then in a single decisive motion, they acted with such precision that others called it genius. But it wasn't genius. It was preparation meeting opportunity. The fruit of silent observation finally ripened. Most people will never understand this level of control because they are addicted to noise. They seek constant stimulation, constant reaction, constant validation. They never slow down enough to think clearly. But the one who stays ahead values solitude. He uses quiet as his weapon, because in quiet, the mind sharpens. While others fear boredom, he uses it to think. And when the storm arrives, he's already moved beyond its reach. Art of staying ahead also means understanding the rhythm of human nature. People rise, get comfortable, and then decay. They become predictable through success, arrogant through power, careless through routine. The Machiavellian mind waits for this moment. The moment when comfort blinds strength. He studies the fall while others celebrate the rise. And when the time comes, he steps forward, not as a rival, but as the replacement. You cannot stay ahead by doing what everyone else does. You must think differently, act quietly, and learn constantly. You must anticipate betrayal before it forms, prepare exits before you enter, and build leverage before it's needed. You must know the players, their motives, their desires, and their fears. Because every power structure, every social circle, every empire is predictable once you learn the patterns that sustain it. The man who stays ahead does not look for fairness. He looks for advantage. He knows that life rewards the prepared, not the deserving. So, while others waste their time arguing about justice, he spends his time studying consequence. He knows the crowd will always be distracted, emotional, and late, and that gives him all the time he needs to move in silence and secure the future before the world catches up. The art of staying ahead is not about running faster. It's about thinking deeper. It's about seeing what others refuse to see, doing what others fear to do, and planning while others dream. Because in a world where everyone follows, the one who predicts commands. The Machiavellian mind understands one eternal law. The world belongs to those who educate themselves beyond comfort, who grow daily while others sleep, who learn strategically while others waste time, and who stay ahead while the rest follow blindly. Power is not a gift. It is earned through awareness, discipline, and foresight. Every lesson you absorb sharpens your control. Every day you study strengthens your command. Every pattern you recognize places you one move ahead of those still reacting to yesterday. The crowd will forever chase pleasure, trends, and distractions. The few, the rare, will choose knowledge. They will observe instead of argue, plan instead of panic, act instead of hope. Those few become architects of destiny, while the rest become its servants.